My name is Julian Chambliss. I'm the chair of the Department of History and coordinator of the Africa and African American Studies program. You are here, of course, because you're good people, smart people, and beautiful people. And you're here to see John Sims, Thomas P. Johnson, distinguished visiting artist. John is an interdisciplinary conceptual artist who is focused on creating multimedia art projects at the intersection of math, art, and social change. He studied mathematics at Antioch College before studying in Germany. As a doctoral student at Wesleyan, he began to explore the link between math and art. He later became coordinator of mathematics at Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota, where he designed a virtual mathematics curriculum for art students. He has curated more than 15 mathematical art shows, and his work have been displayed in shows in the United States, as well as in Spain, Israel, Hungary, and Argentina. Tonight, he will speak about his 15-year-long project, the Recolorization Proclamation. Please join me in welcoming John Sims to Rollins College.
Yeah, dim the lights. Check out these waters, huh? Like milk. Well, first of all, I want to thank Julian. Let's give him a round of applause for being here. One-man dynamo over here. And I want to thank all the other departments and folks who've been supportive in bringing me here. Can you hear me okay? Yep. Okay. Are we ready? I'm about to start. I'm going to do the movie first, so we might want to take that down.
No, he can't see you on the camera. Sorry, there's a technical issue.
Low, maybe?
He can see you.
Well, he can't. I'm going to do the movie now, so.
Okay.
I want to take it
We're going to do a movie, and then we'll bring it back up.
Okay. All right, let's get started here. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to. Oops, let's see. Many years ago, a group of men brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty, implemented through the genocide of the natives and enslavement of the Africans, and dedicated unequivocally to the proposition that white folks are created more equal than others.
The camera too. You want to hear it too?
We are met on a great battlefield of symbols.
This is a fucking Confederate flag, goddammit. There's no way you can justify it. There's no way you can convince me that 2 + 2 = 5.
Where images, language, and sounds are weaponized to protect ideology.
Damn right it doesn't. What does that equal? What does that equal?
To inspire identification and mark territory.
You in Harlem, baby. People struggling, man. People dying from drugs. People getting beat by the police. No, don't tell me I'm judging by the facts. I'm judging. That's a fact. That's a fact. Right, that's a fact. I'm judging by the fact. I ain't judging by no colors.
And this is an art.
You know what that means? I know the Confederate flag means. Everybody knows that. Even the biggest dummy knows that.
This is an art gallery.
A piece of artwork sends shockwaves through the hallowed grounds of Gettysburg.
A controversial art exhibit opened tonight in Gettysburg.
A controversial art exhibit headed to Gettysburg drawing.
This is the latest development in the ongoing controversy over the Confederate battle flag exhibit. Livestock joins us from Gettysburg.
I'm about to talk about the work in a few minutes.
Artist John Sims molds what's immortalized in metal, flown in cloth, and decaled on vehicles into a new message.
Sims takes the traditional Confederate flag and recolors them using the red, black, and green colors of black nationalism which a few people don't seem to like.
The art exhibit has a lot of features, but the main one is a lynching of the Confederate flag.
There's even been talk of a tourism boycott in Gettysburg.
Do not send your sons and daughters to Gettysburg College.
Some say the Confederate flag stands for heritage, while others believe it's about racism.
Hundreds of protesters are expected around Gettysburg.
There's been word that KKK is going to show up.
It's ridiculous. Honestly, I get infuriated just thinking about it.
The whole idea was a little excessive, kind of like slapping those people in the face.
The way the light was positioned, you could see the shadow, and you could see like the noose and then the flag draped from it, and that just really struck me.
This is the most egregious form of hatred I've ever seen. The rhetoric coming out and to talk about hanging the Christian cross of St. Andrew, which is our symbol as Southern people. It don't get any worse than this.
Between the desolation of war and their homes, they interposed their bodies and chose me, the Christian cross of St. Andrew, who was the first disciple of Jesus Christ, as their symbol. I am their flag.
Why are people so afraid of who we are as a people? Why are they so afraid of our symbols? Why is there this cultural genocide taking place around here now? I believe in my heart that when these children start to know the real truth around here, they will discover that the South was right in what she did.
And I wish I was in Dixie. Hooray, hooray, in Dixieland.
I was in Dixie. Away, away. In Dixieland, I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie.
Yeah, so that's the trailer of a film I've been working on for a while. That last scene you saw was H.K. Edgerton, who was performing, is quite a performer, the night before the opening of my Gettysburg show. So what you saw was outside the gallery. I never got to meet H.K. Edgerton because I ended up boycotting my own show. So I'll get to that in a few minutes. But before I talk about the flag stuff, really what I like to do is somehow show you how I've taken two bodies of work, my math artwork and my political artwork, and kind of set them up in a way that they kind of influence each other in this interesting dynamical system, converging to this identity of becoming, or the birth of the political math artist. So I want to take it way back to my college days at Antioch, which is interesting. How many people know about Antioch? Kind of crazy, radical school. 3 weeks before I was going to graduate, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I got a knock at my door, and it's this woman, right? And it's not what you think. She wants me to help her with a proposal, right? And it was a proposal for an environmental field program that would take students from the co-op. She wanted to go to the South and study environmental racism, and she wanted me to help her put it together at the last minute, right? And I'm a math major, okay? And I'm like, okay. And so I helped her put it together, and then I got political, and I got the committee to give an extension so we have more time to do a proper proposal. And then a couple weeks later, we had like a 30, 40-page proposal. I was really excited about it, and she kind of pulled out. I think I want to do something else. And what ended up happening is I became in love with the project, and it turned into the cross-cultural field program, which would have been a program that would take black and white students to go and visit the South, right? And I was on my way to graduate school, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll take a year off, and I'll work on this program. It was, to sort of go to the South and do some work study projects and service learning projects and kind of return to my own roots, because my parents are from the South and they came to Detroit. And so I had this romantic idea about the return to the South, right? And so I organized this program, and one of the things that it became motivating for me was this idea, and this is in the early 90s, this idea that we, African Americans didn't really need to, well, we do in some ways, but this idea of reaching back to Africa to learn about the roots, we kind of forget all these other spaces and stops along the way, including the American South. And one of the other things I was kind of amazed at, I spent a couple years studying in Germany, and I took more African American courses over there than my own school. That didn't make any sense to me either, right? I had to go all the way over there to kind of get access to a curriculum that really appreciated and celebrated African American culture. So I put this together, and it wasn't just enough to do the cross-cultural field program. I thought it would be a good idea to get the students to organize a week-long African American Cultural Week, right? Say, hey, we're going to study African American culture in the South. We need to also celebrate it in the host community of Yellow Springs, Ohio. So they put together that project and worked, and we raised money, took out a one-page ad in the paper, and it became the African American Culture Week. And then in Black Issues in Higher Education did a big story, because we went to the Sea Islands, Penn Center. We learned about the Gullah culture. We went to Keysville, Georgia, did service learning, helped build a library. Went to the King Center, hung out with Coretta Scott King. So we did really nice, and then the students had to take courses and kind of activate the things they would learn in the classroom and give back in a very powerful way. And then we also got covered by the New York Times in terms, so now the idea of creating, connecting with the media to widen discussion. And so I like to say that after I left, the cross-cultural field program continued to go for the next 20 years. And the African American Culture Week now is, I think it's in its 25th year, and has turned into the African American Cross-Cultural Works, and now one of the biggest blues and gospel music festivals in Ohio. So working on that program, right, as a math major, got excited about organizing around issues of the African American experience and creating a project that became institutionalized on a couple levels. From that, there was no turning back, right? And knowing how an individual can make change. So I went off to graduate school to do math, right? So you'll see this kind of math and politics, this sort of. When I was in grad school, I started working on this project called Time Sculpture. And the idea with that was to have a collection of chess sets, clocks, and vases that would turn to chess sets, and chess sets that would sort of talk about conflict, and chairs about support systems, and clocks obviously about measuring time on a metaphysical level. So I created this idea of turning New York City into a clock, right? And so my very first show I've ever had went straight to Soho, right? I mean, which is kind of cool. I mean, most people spend their whole lives trying to get to Soho. So my very first show as a group show, as a solo show. And so this vase of space is kind of cool, this idea of a circle being a vase, this abstraction. So I'm interested in these abstract ideas, and out of the vase of space comes another vase, and so we have this, this is called vase of flower, right? It's kind of like f of x, like a function inside of a function, a vase inside of a vase. And so I started playing with the design objects that I can talk to people in real ways that they can identify with, right? And then also create design averages. And the vase of space turned into these chess sets, and now this is a chess set with the pieces of flowers, right? It's a vase, and it's also a chess set. Chess set becoming a very important metaphor about conflict. And one of the things, as a chess player going way back to junior high school, I was always sort of, unnerved about the idea that whites would go first in playing chess. I mean, it really bothered me, right? And some people would think that was just, get over it, right? Almost like the way you think about the Confederate flag, like in the 80s, right? And so, and this is what I saw when I saw it. This is a chess set that I designed where the board goes up in this kind of quadratic curve, and the pieces, as you get closer to the top, looks like the board. And when you get to the king is one long cylinder. It is the board. That means those aluminum pieces on the top can never win because you can't take it off the board, right? The board, the pieces, they're all structurally a part of each other. And at the bottom are the ebony pieces. And the back row of the ebony pieces blend into the background, which is the bottom. So this was kind of my first math, art, political piece, using chess sets as a metaphor about conflict, about racial dynamics, going all the way back to slavery days in some ways. And so my solution to that was to create a chess set for the colorblind, right? Both sides are the same. And you just have to remember where you move, right? To play chess, computer doesn't need black and white to play, right? Just be smart about it and remember where you move, right? And so I started playing around with that. And then I developed a chess game where actually when you take a piece, then part of the board disappears, right? And so the board shrinks as you play and take pieces, so it became a very dynamic. So as you see, design became a very important part, you'll see, of my work. And this is a clock. And a clock that had 3 different times, representing personal time, global time, community time, and the actual time was some average. So this was a clock that you can really never know what time it is, but only approximate in a way, because as soon as you make the first approximation, the third clock has already changed, right? So it's like, you really never know what time it is exactly, but you kind of feel around it. And that's the grand sun clock. And this is actually a clock too, even though it's a conceptual base. It's a cross-section of an ebony tree, so you see the rings. And the rings of the tree has a clock structure. So it's playing around with that. And this became my very first show. And you can say I invited a poet to respond to the work. So even then, in 2000, here I'm thinking about sort of poetry and art and sort of structure beyond one object and how it connects and issues around social justice and so forth. So now we're going to Florida. Right, when I shook up on my way to Florida to teach, coming down there to teach. So the background of this is this idea of a math person teaching art and the conflict around math and art. But I'm very cognizant around the late 90s, like the issue in South Carolina with the Confederate flag flying on the state capitol. And I was really, kind of tripping on the idea that you had all these counter demonstrations and demonstrations and this sort of thing happening in 2000. It's like, this is unbelievable to me. This is what I had to drive through to get to Florida, right? Then I get to Florida and this is like in my neighborhood. This was unbelievable for me as an American coming from Detroit, a black man coming from Detroit and seeing this and seeing that there was no standstill of molecular structure. Like, it wasn't like, what's going on? It was business as usual. So I kind of responded to this, and the first thing I did was to recolor it, this black, red, and green. And you're coming out as a design and redesign, like what I did with the chess sets, right? Like what I did with the vases and so forth. And then it became a math problem. Like, I like this one, or do I like that one? Do I like this one? Do I like that one? And to know that I can 3-color this Confederate flag, black, red, and green, 6 different ways. Which one was more interesting? Does the black have to separate the red and the green? But what, I want to have black stars, that's much more powerful. you know, and so it became this kind of issue around color placement, and in that kind of exercise, something strange happened. It's like I stopped thinking about the Confederate flag as this like horrific object, right? It became this other thing. And so I turned that into a real flag and returned to the same gallery that I had the time sculptured previously in Soho with this Afro-Confederate battle flag. This was in around 2000, and right at the height of all the stuff that was happening in South Carolina. So I was already responding to this work basically 15 years ago. And then, kind of, my obsessive nature, I started to recolor lots of stuff, and it became the birth of the Recoloration Proclamation Project. And I had the first show was in Harlem, so I moved out of Soho to Harlem. And then I started coloring white on white on white, black on black on black, right? Black and white. You know, this idea of doing cotton flags, white on white on white. So it was just rich with opportunities and possibilities in terms of making these interesting connections. And then I started doing more flags. I recolored the Chinese flag red, white, and blue, the Israeli flag red, white, and blue, the Iraqi flag, and so this became an issue about American imperialistic power reaching across the global thing. And then I had a show and a conference over in Israel, so the Israeli flag became a very interesting sort of platform to talk about some of the issues around the Palestinians and Israelis and so forth. So I created this one where I obviously colored the Confederate flag black, red, and green, and then the Israeli flag, the Palestinian colors, the Iraqi American colors, and then at the bottom, back there, you see I took a Chinese flag and replaced the stars with McDonald arches. And at first people thought that was funny, but some people didn't think it was very funny, right? And then also with the Israeli flag and the Palestinian flag, some folks, some of my Jewish friends were like, what's up? This is complicated. And my point was this, very clearly. If you cannot integrate and cross over design objects, right? Then how in the hell are you going to get people together and connect in real ways? If you can't do it in abstract ways, like cross-coloring flags, right? And so that became part of the sort of mission, is to think about identity and how we get so transfixed on, flags and symbols to sort of, and kind of portray our politics, and then those things become fixed and inflexible, and you trip over them, when in fact identity is very flexible and fluid. And so this is a piece called Two Red Flags, and that is actually, one is, I think the right is the Israeli flag, and the other one's the Palestinian flag. The stitching, right, it's just red parts. All the parts of the flag are red, but far away they look like two red flags. And so I call this one Two Red Flags, right? And so that was, so in some ways I'm moving the project in terms of recoloring all kinds of things and restructuring different flags. And then I said, look, let me get active with this. And then I took the Confederate flag stuff to a KK rally in St. Petersburg, in Florida. And I grabbed some of my students at Ringley and we went down to St. Pete. And I passed out my bumper stickers, right? This was the very thing I started the whole project with, right? And I started passing them out. Now, when I was there, something interesting happened that informed the next phase of my project. It's that this black dude rolled up, and after I started passing out the stickers, he started tearing his up, right? And he basically was like, how can you bastardize the black, red, and green colors with this filthy flag, right? That was his point. So he went on, and then other people started taking their flags off too, right? It's like, oh, what am I going to do? He's just really, I didn't expect that. So I let him talk, and I said, yo, check it out. I'm working on a film. I want to put you in the film. I'd love to have your views in the film. And he was like, word, really? And And we became good friends after that. And so I gave him a space, and I learned from him that people could look at this in very different ways, and that I needed to put a political vector on this project so that I'm not giving out any wrong signals about where I'm coming from personally. Now, in an art gallery, sometimes it's cool to have the work very ambivalent, right? Oh, you can think this and you can think. But with this particular kind of work, I didn't want to be ambivalent about where I'm coming from. I want to come straight at you with this. And so I had the flag there and pushed it that way. And then I got invited to Gettysburg. So this was, after doing all these recoloring flags, this was an opportunity to put a vector, orientation on the work, right? And introduce some new work that would clearly articulate, express my politics. As soon as the work, and so one piece I was going to introduce was the proper way to hang a Confederate flag, where I was going to hang the flag from a 13-foot gallows, and we were going to do it as an outdoor installation for 3.5 weeks. I was going to invite Mary Baraka to come down and read the death warrant, and then at the end of the show, we're going to take the flag and kind of put it in a casket and take it to the Black Cemetery and bury it with tombstones and everything. This is 2004. And part of my hope is that would create such a national, crazy media thing, and the Sons of Confederate Veterans go crazy, and right? And that there could be a real discussion about the Confederate flag, doing this work right in the heart of Gettysburg. So Gettysburg College to host lynching. So the word lynching, I never used that word. It was always a hanging, right? When you think of hanging, you think of some sense of justice and, gallows, but this is like a lynching. And so boycott threatened. Sons of Confederate Veterans were going to shut down Gettysburg. Gettysburg make their money off of tourism and that sort of thing. Bush had planned to come to Tuesday before my opening. I was so excited, because what is Bush going to say? He can't say, no, I hate the work. Oh, it's great. He can't say no comment. He can't say anything. He can't say anything. Can't even say that, right? So he canceled. No, it was serious, because it was been in the paper every day for 2 weeks, right? So the advisor's like, you can't go. Sorry, because nothing you can say. So some of the work, part of the show, is I rewrote the Gettysburg Address and put it in the context of the hallowed grounds being the art space, right? And how it's important to protect that. And that, so I went into that whole thing. And then I did a music video with the text and animation, and that became one of my first video poems. Right, this is some of the flags here. This is the falling cross. Now, originally we were supposed to have these things outdoors. This ended up being in a corner. And I was just so upset about that. That the work had got compromised, and that this could have been a big moment. Now it's going to end up in the, I was on the phone with the president, and, and I was talking to them, and I was like, I made a joke, maybe I should make it 13 inches, right? And they're like, huh? And then that ended up in a press release. Artists will do 13-inch gallows. I was, so it became crazy. And I ended up actually boycotting my own show. I didn't go to opening, even though I think 2,000 people came to the opening, had to wait in line 3-4 hours, go through metal detectors and that sort of thing. Because for me, it had to be more about the work and more than myself. And also I needed to make a statement about how the work was compromised. Here we are sending troops over to Iraq to fight for their freedom. And I couldn't even do this very, very important project in the way it needed to be done. So those are the voting booths from the 2000 elections. So I had real, authentic, hanging Chad voting booths with the Floridian colored, Florida, not the state flag is red and white, but it's this sort of, so I created this installation. I did a drag flag, hot pink, glitter, fur, fuchsia, stilettos. This became the Confederate Gothic photo that I did. I started doing stage photography, the Confederate family, right? You always hear these stories about, oh, it's not about race, it's not about slavery, it's not about... But even your most conservative, pro-Confederate person will look at this picture, right, and be disturbed. Right? I mean, it's... All right, you got me. You got me. Can you put your colored one on there? Yeah, that sort of thing. And then the Ku Klux Klan wrote a press release. Now it's getting exciting, right? So I got to read this to you. Attack on the Confederate flag in Gettysburg. Okay, the recent display approved by the Gettysburg College is nothing more than racism at its finest. The Gettysburg College has approved a black, racist, homosexual artist by the name of John Sims to display the Confederate battle flag hanging from a gallows. John Sims says that this is the proper way to hang a Confederate flag. Sims has also included the Confederate flag in the colors of the Black Liberation Movement, as well as pink and lavender for homosexuals. This is a direct attack on American history and Southern heritage. This is also an extreme act of racism against a symbol of white Christian America. Sims says that he will lynch the battle flag and bring it back on his terms. Whoa! Get a call from my mother. Ding, ding. John, yeah. Baby, yeah. Are you gay? Mom, if I was gay, you would not find out from the Ku Klux Klan, okay? Give me a break. So, also, a couple churches did sermons on the work around DC, so that was good that there were people on Sunday talking about this issue. So it became very clear, being able to get out of the gallery and have an active discussion about very important issues that can intersect with the art process. Then, after that, I did a show with Dred Scott called Troy's ART at Ringling College of Art and Design, 6, and I got to build the gallows the way I wanted to. And this is what it should have been looking like. And the bondage flag, the wedding flag, the falling cross made out of Confederate flags, playing with that. And then I went back to New York. And there I thought, I'm going to do this show called the Recoloration Closing Act, where I invite poets to respond to the small exhibition on the art wall at the Bowery Portrait Club. So I had people like Amiri Baraka, people like Karen Finley, and people like Greg Tate and his Burnt Sugar Orchestra. They did a real funkified Dixie treatment, which is awesome. Now what I have here is a video, and so check it out. But without further ado, I'd like to bring to the stage the legendary activists, poets, one of the foundational ingredients of the Black arts movement in the 60s and 70s, who I extremely admire, and want to thank Amiri Baraka. So he did a poem in response to that.
You hate you worse than you hate me. You make up stuff about me so you can blame somebody else for your ignorance and evil. Oh, great powerlessness of the ugly Satan ended before they existed, the dark planet of gnats inferiority, to live upside down or backwards, the closed door of the sky. You hate yourself for being human, for being expected to be civilized. You can't even act civilized. You hate yourself because of the people who you know should not exist or be dead or not thought up, except maybe your customers and things you can fuck. Your hatred of me is because it's the only way to keep me in slavery. If you loved me, everything would be different. You know this, but only as a lie you created. You hate yourself for having to hate me and now have to lie about it. You hate me as fear. You hate me as envy, ugly, so you can resist it, but rock and roll denies this. You hate me because you are primitive and still haven't thought up a way we both would love the world like ourselves. You are dying, hence irrational. You are about to die and hate me because I will outlast you and tell all your secrets, and the world will be better because you're gone. You hate me because you lie and know I know it. And because I think you corny and ignorant and unable to dig the everythingness of everywhere. You hate yourself because you are the slave of hateful things and madness. You hate yourself because you have broken all the commandments. You hate yourself for having to hate me because I recognize you from Revelations. Dr. King said, how long? How long? Not long. Revelations got you booked on the 12/18. Thank you.
Yeah, so there was really important intersection to be able to connect with Mary Baraka in that way. In fact, during the Gettysburg show, I was periodically on the phone with him and talking about various strategies, and it became very clear to do these kind of projects, you have to do the kind of community organizing way ahead of time and build the kind of support so that you're not on a limb and that the work doesn't get sort of crunched in, right? And so that was important to be able to connect. So I took the show to Tallahassee, right? A group show called Afro Provocations. And I'm thinking, okay, it'll be a cool show, put up the Confederate flags and do a new piece centering around the voting stuff, right? Remember that? Yeah, let's get to that. So I did official voting matter for the Afro-Confederate flag based on the ballot for the hanging chads in 2000, right? And so people can actually vote on which of the black, red, green configurations that they like the best. And so we set that up, and that was kind of cool. Or you can even do a write-in too, like with an extra color or something. And then I started playing around with this. So actually, this is a diptych, a duet, but there's also a third one that has the, you got the Florida flag, you got the Confederate flag, and what's another X here I have? Yeah, so, let's see, XX, maybe the black, red, and green one, yeah. So that goes there. No, actually, you remember the trailer, you saw the lime green and orange Confederate flag, right? That's kind of like a Florida flag I did. So the third one would be that one. The marriage flag, the bondage, and then that's what the gallows look like in that space. Now, during all this time, I'm thinking about the battle between, right, the, North and South, Confederate, blah, blah, blah. I'm also, in my classrooms, I'm also thinking about this kind of tension between math and art, right? And that started to play out in my work too, just sort of thinking about this other kind of civil war, conceptual war that's happening with the math space and the art space. And so I started looking at the relationship between mathematics and art and visual mathematics and ethnomathematics and realized that there is some serious tension happening in curriculums, the art spaces, the divide between the science and humanities and art and how it plays out. And it plays out in very incredible ways, and I'll tell you how. So, we value science in a lot of ways over the arts, right? Math over the arts. And mathematics, in some ways, becomes a gatekeeper in terms of your access to certain opportunities very early on. Also, mathematics has become a very important parameter for your sense of, consciousness and value and identity. So when someone tells you you can't do math, right, that creates a certain kind of anxiety about your general scope about intelligence, particularly since an IQ test is a visual mathematics test, right? So if I get you at that level, I've already cut you in half. So if I say black people can't do math, women can't do math, artists can't do math, then we really got a war going on, a very, very powerful war going on. Because you might not, if you can't get through calculus, you're not going to be a doctor, you're not going to be a lawyer. You follow what I'm saying? No one questions the relevance of having calculus as a predictor of being successful as a lawyer or doctor, right? But it's set up in a very political kind of way, where in terms that mathematics has become the servant to the science. right? Opposed to being connected to the arts and value in that kind of way. So that's been part of the political mission in terms of dealing with the relationship between math and art. And in some ways I realized that's a really incredible fight to be fought, sometimes even more powerfully than is what's happening with the Confederate flag, right? Because when you undermine someone at the core element, destruction will transmit from generation to generation. And so part of my work in trying to empower artists to not run away from math, not take the pass for not caring about math, but embrace it as a technology that allows you to see deeply and to take your art to next levels and to be competitive on other levels. That's very important. So that's been part of the work. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to engage in that discussion, then I have to kind of take the discussion beyond the classroom into the gallery spaces as a curator, right? And create a national discussion about this. So I started creating these shows. And so the first thing was, I started thinking about what does math mean to me? What does math art mean to me? So I did a tree, and I drew a tree, right? It's a mapping thing, and then I mathematized it and created this Pythagorean tree. So there's different ways of conceptualizing, thinking about a tree. And so this became a vocabulary system by which I can create words and bigger ideas. And so the first thing was to be able to realize what is retinal, recreative, and mathematical. And this one became the first, the square root of a tree, right? A way to conceptualize how mathematics can help support the art process. And this became the tree root of a fractal, how visualization in the art process can support mathematics, right? And then the math art brain, where there's a sense of balance. So now we're going to permute through a tree root metaphor and go to a right brain, left brain metaphor by taking this object. So the idea is that I wanted to be able to express what I'm thinking about math and art as a political mission by doing mathematical art. And so I created this. This became my philosophy. Then I started thinking about, well, through the math art brain, what would a tree look like, right? I'm making it up with trees, but what would a tree look like? And then I created a three-dimensional tree. So this is a transcubic tree. It's not about spatial, it's conceptual dimensions. And so this became actually a chapter in the book, math art book, that I developed the idea of trees, roots, and brain, a metaphysical foundation for mathematical art. And this became the atomic tree. So this idea is you come up with an interesting idea, and then it tiles itself. It reproduces itself in bigger structure, right? And that became cool. So you'll see a lot of my work works like this, taking things that seem opposite, right? Overlaying them, finding a design average, the way they work, and then tiling the space with that. To create this show, Math, Art, Art, Math, with cool people like Joseph Albers, MC Escher, Al Hell, Frank Stella, who else was in the show? Saul Witt was in the show, DJ Spooky, like Mel Bachner, some cool people became in the show. And actually in the show, I also created a classification scheme for mathematical art. And this would give other art historians a way to talk about math art. And I got invited by the International Review of African American Art to guest edit a whole journal issue on rhythm and structure mathematical art in the African diaspora. Where I did a nice survey on the kind of math art stuff that was happening. Then it created a conference, a serious math art conference, also a topology conference. And then I started thinking about what kind of work should I do besides curating that could add to this discussion, particularly if I'm going to motivate other art students. Artists want to see other artists get down, right? Like, what can you do? You're talking about what can you do? And so that became very important. And that led to creating another show with 9 micro shows that had poets responded, so I added the poetry element. And then for a whole year, we had these 9 6-week shows and poets responding and created this whole event. So this kind of looks like what I was doing in college, right? With the cross-cultural field program, African American Culture Week. It's like building festival ideas to get people to conference beyond a traditional notion of a conference. And so what I want to quickly get through right here is the quilt project that I did that ended up becoming my manifesto. And so the first thing I wanted to do was to visualize pi. We know what pi is. It's the circumference of a circle divided by this diameter, and then I'm going to color code it, right? And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to write it around like this. Then I'm going to color code it and get this. Now, some people ask me, why did you pick those colors? Well, what I did, I looked at the distribution of the various digits out to a couple hundred and see which digits showed up the most and made that black, and the ones filled with the fewest, I made the pink, and tried to create as much as possible some more balance. But as you go out to infinity and normalize, those distributions normalize out anyway. They'll all show up about the same frequency. And so this became a kind of numerical of pi out and color coding it. And then this is what that looked like. It became a digital quilt. And then checking this, we realized we made a mistake. Like a mistake happened, right? And so I could just let it slide as an artist. I made a mistake, boom, boom. But the math part of me was like, no, this is not cool. So I had my student redo it, and then I had my other student check that, and then another student check that, and then I check. So the checking part becomes a very important part of the work, right? To really check, to know that what you're saying is true. And so started coloring it different colors, black and, doing different bases, base 2, for black and white pie, base 3, coloring it red, white, and blue, American pie. And so now it gets to be fun. Now I can start putting on different kinds of intersecting with social stuff. And then I was able to connect with the Amish community in Sarasota, Florida. In fact, they have the biggest community outside the Pennsylvania and the Midwest. They start off as a vacation community, and then now it's really thriving. So I was able to connect in that way. So this is one of the black and white binary ones, and then this is the inverse. So I started looking at quilts and co-quilts, sister quilts that go together. And then the African-American one, right? You got American, African-American, right? And then these two go together, right? The one on the right is the civil pie movement, where in the corners you have black and white co-quilts, and on the other side you have African-American, American. And then this one goes with the black and white. So I started looking at ways things could go together. This is the model for a quilt. This is a visualization of the equation 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. You see the internal black squares. How many black squares you got? You got 3 times 3, right? How many brown squares? You got 4 times 4. How many you got in all? You got 3 squared plus 4 squared. Well, we know that's 5 squared. 5 squared is 5 sets of 5. 5 shapes that have 5 elements. You see the shapes on the corner, connected by the dots, the lines, 5, 5, 5, 5, in the middle, 5. So this is a visualization of the equation 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. And that's that 5 different ways. And so that became a quilt. And then the self-portrait, the math artist and the political math artist, and then these African patches that I got. And that became the center of creating the hyper quilt, where on the outside were the pie quilts, the Pythagorean quilts, the self-portrait quilts, and then the African in the middle. So that became the hyper quilt. And then I did pie dresses based on black and white, and then a whole system of those, pie music. Actually, I'm gonna play real quick. This is pie mapped into the key B flat, played over 12-bar blues, performed by Kenny Drew Jr. You get the idea with that. And then I created a character called Johannes Curtis Schwarzenstein, who's kind of my alter ego, the Afro-German Jewish math art poet. And he, he's this poem that's created, and he's in German. And so 2015, right, now I'm about to speed up a little bit, became the year where we had Pi Day, right, Pi Year, March 14, 2015, right? We also have, 2015 is the 150th anniversary of the end of the Civil War. So, wow, I'm gonna be busy, right? And so I had a quilt show with this in January that that kind of overlap with Pi Day. And there you go, Pi going right through the title. And those are the dresses. Yeah, connected, new work. And that's the Pies. I did a record with the Pi song. And then what I want to show you quickly. So for Pi Day, I did organize a Pi dance party, right? A lot of those things were happening. And then I did a Pi Day song. And then I did a Pi Day music video. So I want to share that with you right quick. I think you'll appreciate this. Can we get the lights out? So this is becoming the Pi Day national anthem type thing, and so that was cool. But next year I'm going to be doing a big Pi Day party in Times Square, and so we're going to play that on some of the kiosks, and it'll be a great opportunity to get folks to connect in that way. So after that show, doing the Pi Day party and all that. I had a show going on in Baltimore. The opening was 2 days after the riots in Baltimore, okay? So, and the theme was the birth of the political math artist. So I had this show, it was called Evidence Identity Through Fiber Art. And so I put this show together. You see with the battle flag, the hanging flag. In the middle are these knots, all knots up to 8 crossings. It's sort of a kind of a classification, knot-driven project, and then the African quilt, and then my political math artist quilt there. And so when I got there, the city was on lockdown, right? And I was like, oh, I need to respond to what happened in Baltimore. It makes sense, right? You know, I'm the political math artist. This is a moment that just, you know, the city's on lockdown, demonstrations are happening every day. I need to do something. So my hotel was right downtown, and I went down to the waterfront, and I would see the Baltimore flag. Whoa, you know I'm gonna go to town. And that's what I did. That's the Baltimore flag. Look at all that geometry. So the first thing I did was take that away. And I started recoloring it. Right? And then I started tiling. Check this out. This way. Like this. And that became the X. And then this became Black Lives Matter in Baltimore, and that became Baltimore X. Right? And then I actually got the flags made in 2 days before the opening. I got there on a Wednesday, Thursday, the opening was on Saturday. And then I got t-shirts made, same day. And then that was the actual show, and you see up in the corner, we were able to get those flags up, right? So that was a quick turnaround, 48 hours. And so that was the show I realized I had already planned I'm gonna do, because I didn't do the burial that I wanted to do in Gettysburg. I was gonna do it at the end of the summer, Juneteenth. It's like, I gotta do this now, Memorial Day, right? And so this is some of the stuff that happened in, you know, what was going on in Baltimore. Me and my t-shirts in Baltimore. And then a while before that, I put a call to artists and poets and community organizers to do this belated burial project. And I was gonna do it later, and I said, no, we gotta do it now. And so I reached out to Julian and other folks and said, we gotta put together a team, and we gotta do this. And so this is what, and it needed to be the 13 states connected to the flag. And so I organized these teams. And the idea was that we would have a kind of a burial, funeral, burning, and people would like sort of patch in and video feed into this kind of monitor thing that we would have on my website. And so we created the 13 flag funerals with all these states, and each state had a team and a Facebook page and that sort of thing. And then I reached out to each of the states and got a poet that would represent and do like a eulogy poem, right? And then these were the posters for each of the states, you know, so I worked with the graphic, and each state, we had to have different flavor, connect in a nice way. Okay. And then we had the poets from each of the states, and they did small videos, and we took like 30 seconds from each one, and we patched it all together, and that was a nice advertising, get people excited about what was gonna happen on Memorial Day. Bitchu right here did a great job. Let's give her a round of applause. And we had poets from the whole, like, involved. It was pretty cool. And then the Charleston Eye happened. 3.5 weeks after. Now here's interesting, right? Terrible event, horrific, got completely politicized, right? And you know, what I tried to do in Gettysburg was to create this art action that would get a, you know, sort of a reaction that would make people think about bringing down the Confederate flag. But it's nothing like when people are murdered, right? When people are killed, there's some sort of emotional transformation that happens. And that was pretty unfortunate, because it's no way that 9 people should have died to motivate a discussion about bringing down the Confederate flag in South Carolina or any other state, right? And so that really kind of also made me angry, that people have to die to motivate a discussion that should be very intellectual. And so these are the folks that died, and then after that, you know, I tried to put together a team in South Carolina, and that was very difficult, right? I couldn't get a team because it was a certain fatigue around the flag. People didn't want to deal with it anymore. And then, as soon as this happened, then the flag became the consolation prize, if you will, on some level, right? It was like, it's easier to sort of focus on that and not really deal with some of the real critical subterranean issues that are powerful, like all these guns, racial attitudes, like, just some general supremacy issues. And so I decided, okay, at that point people started burning the flag, and I said, well, look, we already did this on Memorial Day, let's do something for 4th of July in all the states, not just the 13. And some of my friends were like, well, I'm not buying a Confederate flag to burn. First of all, am I giving them the money? And first of all, I don't, that's crazy. So I put together this support kit. You gotta check this out.
John Sims Projects presents the Confederate Flag Burn and Bury Digital Support Kit. To mark the 150th anniversary of the end of the Civil War, and in response to the recent events in South Carolina, there is a call to bring down the Confederate flags. Join us by burning and burying the Confederate flag all across the United States of America on the 4th of July. To make your Confederate flag burning and burial a more stimulating and meaningful experience, we are offering, absolutely for free, a digital support kit. First, you'll get a printable 8.5 by 11 Confederate flag. This is ideal for all of you out there who refuse to buy a Confederate flag or cannot find one because they are all sold out. Also, you get a copy of John Sims' Gettysburg Redress, a rewrite of Lincoln's famous Gettysburg speech. This is a perfect text to read during your burning. What would a Confederate flag barbecue be without music? So we have included a hip-hop, dirty South blues spoken word remix based on John Sims' rejected LA Times op-ed piece, a perfect listening companion to your burning and burying. Then you get a commemorative, printable Afro-Confederate battle flag so you won't ever forget that black lives must matter, even in the most insensitive places. And lastly, but not least, for all you creative folks who might get the urge to recolor the damn thing after you have done all that burning and burying, you get a printable outline of the Confederate flag. To get your free Burn and Bury digital support kit download, go to www.13flagfunerals.com.
Yeah, so that was cool. So 4th of July, South Carolina. I went to South Carolina, and I organized with my printable kit, and had people organizing this cross. In the back is the actual Confederate flag in South Carolina, at the memorial they have there for Confederate soldiers. And people handed out the lighters, and people burned it and all that. And then the state troopers just came out of nowhere, right? So things got, this particular participant refused to put his burning Confederate flag out. And then people kind of sort of organized a barrier between the state troopers and this participant. So it got really interesting. And then so we had all these kind of burnings and buryings happening, both for the 13 flag funerals, but also for the Burn and Bury project across the whole country. So I tried to put together a remix of that Burn and Bury hip-hop track I did. And this is hot off the press. It's still work in progress, working with my Romanian video person. He's working over there on this, for me today. So I want to share this with you. This is work in progress here.
It's a controversy brewing here and across the South. On Memorial Day, the day we remember fallen soldiers, a local man and others.
Right now, across the South, there is a movement to bury the Confederate flag. One ceremony, in fact, took place in Metro Atlanta. CBS 46.
And while many people were flying the American flag this Memorial Day, another group in Central Florida was burning the Confederate flag.
They say they are burning the flag to symbolize burying a...
Activists say that setting fire to a Confederate flag right here in Nashville, part of a series of simultaneous protests that are known as 13 Flag Funerals.
let it go, let it go, burn, and bury all the divine, burn, bury, let it go, burn, and bury all that died. We are in very troubled times. This story started many scores ago by the founding fathers, of whom we have known of the toxic contradictions that would poison this future. From a failed Reconstruction, a compromised civil rights movement, a thwarted black asylum movement, affirmative action, and countless lynchings, occurrences of police brutality, of injustice, all in between. We see the consistent resistance to social injustice. We are in haunted times where race and blackness are debated and presented like magic, tricking our best minds. Burn and bury, let it go, burn and bury the pain and the woe. Burn, bury, let it go, burn and bury. Downtown New Orleans. We're in wartime. Racial deflection and white supremacy and privilege are all on one side. Black poverty and mass incarceration and double consciousness are all on the other. Welcome to the American Civil War II. The war that started way before General. And with any war, flags are very important signifiers that mark the social, cultural, and historical space. Some may believe the Confederate flag is about heritage and not hate. The reality speaks otherwise. This flag can never represent the rich diversity and dynamic heritage of Southern where the African American experience has played a central role. Burn and bury, let it go, burn and bury the whites over blacks. Burn and bury, let it go, burn and bury the systematic attacks. If we cannot resolve the issue of the Confederate flag, something that we can see, how can we, as a nation, process the complex things that we cannot see? Continue to fly this flag. It's not only passive-aggressive, but it promotes visual terrorism. And if black people and sympathetic others constant resistance and protest of such symbols, then we run the risk of sending the wrong signal. The Confederate flag flying, the Fergusons, the Eric Gardners, and the cases like Baltimore are powerful examples that show consistent lack of respect for black people. When there is no respect, there is no justice, and then no peace. Burn and bury, let it go, burn and bury all the divine. Burn and bury, let it go, burn and bury all that died. Yeah, so thank you. So basically, so the idea now is to make a call for an annual Confederate flag funeral every year. And so that's the next kind of thing that we want to work on, possibly work with Julie and other folks, is to kind of ritualize this in a way so that this can become a sort of a process by which we consistently and annually reflect back on the history, right? And also use that as a way to extract energy so that we can pay attention to the kinds of things that can destroy and debilitate our wider community. And so I think it's important to look back on that history and sort of create a ritual that reflect on that. So that's going to be the next element of this, to do this again next year. Many of you saw the Afro-Dixie, how many people came to the Afro-Dixie remix thing? So this is the last thing I want to show. The Afro-Dixie remix is very, very important, like recoloring the flag, taking the song Dixie and redoing that. And so I have a little cool infomercial real quick for you. Check it out.
Stock, hot off the press, and just in time for the 150th anniversary of the end of the American Civil War. Recoloration Proclamation, a John Sims project, presents the Afro-Dixie Remixes, an incredible collection of the song Dixie, remixed and reimagined as you've never heard them before. You'll hear Dixie as spiritual, blues, jazz, gospel, soul, funk, reggae, samba, house, R&B, hip-hop, and even a Jimi Hendrix-style version for you rock fans. Performed by a diverse group of Florida's best musicians, featuring Twinkle, Kenny Drew Jr., Allie Couch, Nigel Lewis, Scott Kurtz, Michael Mendez, Gino and Skunk Boogie, just to name a few. This collection of Dixie remixes makes a perfect gift for reflecting on the genesis of Southern heritage, black music, and the difficult American journey since 1865.
That's a real number, so you can call it.
If you order now, you can get this great music on CD, not for $19.99, not for $14.99, but for an unbelievable $9.99 plus shipping and handling. Order now, you'll get absolutely free the Mega Mix bonus track, featuring all the remixes together. And for the serious collector interested in the limited edition vinyl LP, call 1-800-604-1865 or go to www.afrodixieremixes.com to get your once-in-a-lifetime offer. So celebrate the 150th anniversary of the end of the Civil War with this unique collection of remixes. Once you listen to these remixes, you'll never hear the original Dixie the same way again. Here's how to order. Call toll-free 1-800-604-1865 or visit www.afrodixieremixes.com for your incredible collection of the Afro-Dixie remixes, starting at $9.99 plus shipping and handling. We accept MasterCard, Visa, Discover, and PayPal. Call now. Order now.
Yeah. So that's a real ad I'm putting out too. So the last slide is basically this. So I did the Dixie remixes. Two other things I'm going to plan on doing. I just finished writing a play about getting ready for the Gettysburg show. So I'm working with a really awesome director. Just went to open in New York for off-Broadway work. So we're going to try to get something produced there. After the Civil War, a bunch of folks from the South went to Brazil and started a town called Americana, and planning to do an action down there. I'm going to go there and give the city of Americana a black, red, and green Confederate flag in memorial of the Afro-Brazilians who kind of suffered under the Confederate rule in the late 1800s. And then I'm going to do another one. The last action will be, I'm going to do kind of a same-sex mock wedding of a Confederate soldier and a Union soldier as a performative piece in San Francisco. And we're going to do that as a kind of a private reception and stream that nationally. So we're going to be working with some really cool people on producing that. But to put it all together, so how this worked, the play, in the play itself and the stage itself is an installation, right? It's about me getting ready for Gettysburg, packing things, on the phone with the president, trying to figure out what's going on, not knowing that I was going to eventually boycott my own show. I'm working with a drag queen on the drag flag, I work with a DJ on the Dixie remixes, I'm working with all kinds of folks getting ready to get this work off to Gettysburg. So we have the flags, we have the Afro-Dixie remixes that, there's going to be part of the Gettysburg show. Actually, there's a track part of that. We got the gallows, we got the Gettysburg redress, the text, the drag flag, and then we have the flag history, the video poem. I did a whole flag, kind of a lot of people don't know the history of the Confederate flag as a design situation and all the different things that happen around that. And each of these elements in the play branch out to things that are connected that happen off stage, right? So the flag that moves to the gift to Americana, right? And the Afro-Dixie remixes push the Afro-Dixie infomercial that lives in the media space. The gallows now become the burials, which we actually just did for Memorial Day. The Gettysburg dress now becomes pushed into the poetic reflections. So all the eulogies and the Dixie Remix reflections that happen with these listening parties that happen all over the country. The drag flag moves to the wedding and the civil union, and then the flag history video poem moves to the film. And so in some ways, the play itself informs all these actions and work that happen off stage. So this is the actual recoloration and proclamation where the play, the text sits at the very, very center. And so we're completing that up this year. And so this has been the journey, my journey as a political math artist. And I want to thank you for having me here. I want to thank Julian also for giving me the opportunity to share my work and working with you. You did great work, and having all of the administration here, I really appreciate that. So if you have any questions, I'm game.
We have time for some questions. If someone has some questions, please have to use the mic.
So I'm not really sure how to phrase this.
Okay.
But being a pale-skinned person,
okay,
and being really interested in not just racial reconciliation, but these issues of injustice and structures of endemic racism.
Right.
What are some of your thoughts and ideas on partnering, or I guess some steps that people can take to be able to start bringing this consciousness to other people?
Right. I think the question is to figure out where you are, where people are individually, both intellectually and creatively, and what they can contribute to a bigger discussion, right? And to move in very sincere and honest kinds of ways, and to connect to people in honest ways, right? And I think that's the most important thing, by having an honest conversation, and then create a condition where, hey, let's do a project, let's connect, let's work. That's going to Antioch. One of the things I learned about Antioch, the curriculum, is that you learn the theory, but you have to practice, right? You have to do it. You'll make mistakes and you'll fumble, like learning a language. You have to speak it. And you have to say things over and over and over again. So for me as an artist, I'm not interested in doing one object in a gallery, there it is, somebody buys it and it's moved. I'm interested in doing things that creates a periodic possibility, that it happens over and over, gets ritualized, right? And then that's where the real evolution tends to happen. And things that have an intrinsic rhythm. And then it sort of seeps to the soul. Like when you learn how to play jazz piano and you really know what's up, it's like speaking. You've already played part of that already, right? And so it's natural, but you gotta learn how to play it over and over and over again and fumble through it. So I think that's important, being able to sort of have honest dialogue with yourself, what you have to offer, what you think your issues are, and then engage in collaborative ways through working, service learning, service working, you know, in a kind of service kind of capacity is also important. And then when you have feelings that sort of like, why? To be honest about that and talk things through. I think that's where it becomes transformative, if there's a sense of honesty. I think that's what's paralyzing the race issue in America, is that some parts of those is very insincere. It's like a real honest forgiveness is always a possibility, but if you don't come correct and come with sincerity, it's only going to be a surface situation. And that's what happens with race in America. It's like having a sort of a chronic neuromuscular disease. You can walk around and be okay 1 minute and the next minute be totally horizontal. Any other questions?
I just want to say, I am fascinated. I've never seen, I'm from New Jersey. Oh, you can't hear me? I'm sorry. No, I'm just so impressed. I have personally been, and I know my brothers and sisters have been impacted by the flag. I was fearful, and I went to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I was having a good time with my girlfriends, and I saw that flag as a welcome, and it was strewn down the main drag, and it is a fear. It is a fear, and what you did was so deep. I mean, but it was deep, but it was simple, and you cut right through the fear that I had, and I mean, I came out, and I was hoping I would see more Black folks out there, and I asked my friends. I said, why wouldn't you support? Because it's been on TV. It hasn't been secret, but that fear is intrinsic, and what you were able to do for me was to cut through that fear.
Thank you.
And you did it on an intellectual level. It wasn't on a violent level. It wasn't on, it wasn't a lot of talk. You cut right through it, and I thank you for that. And I just want to tell you how impressed I am by you. Thank you so much.
Well, I want to respond to that by saying, I did this project, for me first, I had to explore my own anger first. This wasn't some graduate MFA art school project, this was for my own survival, to be honest. And so, you know how you're on a plane and they tell you if the oxygen mask comes down and blah, 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 you got a kid or whatever, you got to put your own oxygen mask on first, right? You got to save yourself first. And then if you're successful, you can save someone else or create a discussion that could lead to other people building off of that. And so that project is based on that approach. It's I felt, coming from Detroit and seeing this flag, I was mad at the white people and the Black people, to be honest. I was how can the Black people let the white people and people in power get away with this? Right? So it was a complex anger. It wasn't just really, binary. It was come on. But so by recoloring it, and connecting it, and then doing the same thing with Dixie coming frontal, flipping. And one of the cool things about Black culture is that we can take things and flip it and make it beautiful. You know what I mean? And if you heard the Afro-Dixie remixes, you saw that you witnessed that yesterday. And that's an intrinsic part of African American culture, is being able to rise from these constraining conditions and still create incredible culture. And I think that's the takeaway, I think, from that.
This is sort of an observation and then maybe your thoughts on the observation. I was very intrigued by when you started with your conflict over the chessboard. And the chess pieces. It's very square, it's very linear. It's already been defined where pieces stand, what they can and cannot do. The white pieces, I don't know, to me it seems that's the white man's world. Right? And then you end with a diagram that's circular. You've completely redone the playing field.
Yeah.
So by your work and by, I'm just curious about your thoughts.
Is there a question? No. I was just whoa. Well, actually, I do have a bonus slide that I wanted to show, people who came to my Afro-Dixie thing, I did a bonus, remember? People are excited about the Jimi Hendrix version. And basically, one of the things I'm planning to do is to return back to the time sculpture. I never got to do it, right? Because I got sidetracked with the Confederate flag stuff, to be honest. And then 9/11, right? But just like I got sidetracked from going to grad school, I was going to go to MIT and study neuroscience. And I was this is a very important project for me, right? And I need to do this. And I need to work that out, for myself. And then so coming to this project and turning New York City into a clock, and then eventually turning the U.S. Got these 12 objects mapped into Manhattan. Those 12 objects get mapped into 23 objects that get spread around the country as outdoor sculpture connected by some sort of cyber lighting internet system. And so that's my next big project, is, coming off of the Confederate burial issues, right? And now we can talk about connecting in these other kinds of ways that examine issues around space and time and conflict and support systems. So this is the next project that I want to work on, and so I'm excited about that too. Huh?
I just had a brief question. How do you compare the Confederate flag, the symbol, to the swastika? Is there a parallel?
Is there a parallel between the two? Yeah, I think any symbol that creates a sense of fear, right? And I studied in Germany for 2 years, and I worked at the Max Planck Institute for Cybernetics. I worked at Daimler-Benz, one of the Bosch electronics companies during the summer, and I remember going into a secondhand store, and it ended up in the back room, right? And kind of looking through stuff, and there was this box, and I opened it up, and there was like authentic Nazi uniforms and like flags, and that freaked me out. Confederate flags freak out. That was sort of like, so any symbols that, there's a sense of supremacy and violence and destruction and that we will kill you, there's a certain level of equivalence with that. You follow what I mean? And so I generally don't like making comparisons, different cultures and pains across different things, because people, because it's all equally terrible and horrific and painful. And but I think dealing with the Confederate flag, I don't need any other reference to validate what I'm trying to do. I don't need to talk about the swastika. I don't need to talk about anything else. I'm talking about right here what's in front of me. You follow me? That's like that. So don't you want to? No, we don't even do that. We can talk about this and talk about that history and what that means. And so that's how I approach that.
So we have time for a couple more questions.
Go ahead, let them talk.
So you shared the story about the gentleman who decided to take off the sticker and rip it up. And you said that that experience for you was important because you realized you needed to give some space for him to respond to that and enter into the conversation. Do you have a line somewhere beyond which you won't go to open up space in the conversation? Like, have you had interactions with white Southerners who would come up and say, it's heritage, not hate. I grew up, blah, blah, blah. The flag meant this in my family. Like, is that part of the conversation? Or not, just because of the way you're approaching
having
it?
this black man come up to me and be upset about intersecting black, red, and green colors with the Confederate flag, I can understand that. Just like, didn't you see in the opening trailer, you had this black man in Harlem who saw a recolored Confederate flag, and it didn't matter that it was recolored. Yeah. This is not an art project to him. It was still a Confederate flag. Now the nuance is for like the educated, overly educated, savvy folks that can make little perturbations around this and that and create some, for him it's still a Confederate flag. It wasn't enough change to make him move and jump beyond that kind of emotional association. So I understood that. I had to be sensitive to that. So that's why I had to do the proper way to hang a Confederate flag. And then because you got to build trust with the audience. They got to know where you're coming from. I've actually, check this out, I've got pulled over by the cops, had my Confederate flag stickers on the dashboard, get pulled over by a white cop, and you know, I'd just come from a lecture and I had books on the history of the Confederate flag. He looked at that and was like, kind of impressed, but for different reasons that you might expect. He was like, wow, this is a black guy who's really, he gets, you know, the Confederate, you know, wow, like, see, it's about heritage. That was his thinking. And I had to, you know, can I have a sticker? And so yeah, now check out the website while you at it. And the Gettysburg show, you know. I'm sure he went home and got really surprised. You know what I'm saying? So that's, but if you think about it, the Gettysburg show, we had H.K. Edgerton who was angry at me for very different than the black guy in Harlem. They're both like thinking what I'm doing is off, but they're coming in very different directions. That's when I knew I was on the right track.
So I've seen in 50 years disdain for the Confederate flag flare up and then go away.
Right.
And I've always been aware of people who argue that it's about something that has nothing to do with hatred. I've heard those arguments my whole life. I've also seen horrific violence, churches being blown up with girls in them, and all of that stuff.
Right.
What happened in 2015 after that incident that prompted the flags to come down? Do you have a theory about why it happened then?
I think there's some critical things to happen. One of the persons that perished was a state congressman, right? So he worked in the same body that his colleagues are the ones that, so it was like one of their own died. So it became less abstract. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the fact that it happened in a church, I guarantee you, if that guy went in there and shot them and no one died, the Confederate flag would still be hanging in South Carolina right now. Even the potential to kill them wouldn't have been enough, right, to bring that flag down. The fact that people are dead, it creates a critical shift in the emotional space. Just critical. And so even then, people were still trying to stall the process. Oh, we need to talk about it. And then people were saying, well, if we take down the flag, they're going to have to take down their slave memorial around the corner. It was like all these weird, like, discussions. Like, amazing. It was amazing.
So at least part of it is that it was personal?
Yeah, I think emotional. And emotional to the personal connects. This is what I'm saying, right? If that Charleston had happened in, say, Alabama, the same thing happened in Alabama, I don't think South Carolina would have responded to it, right? 9 people would have got killed in a church in Alabama. You think, no, it happened in Charleston, happened in South Carolina, happened to one of their own, it happened in a church. And my point, and if it wasn't going to come down then, it would never come down, ever. So I think, but it had to come down, like for moral reasons, for like, I think we couldn't have, I mean, the president going there to do the eulogy, and you know, it just would have made no sense, I think. But now they're moving, you know, federal legislation about Confederate flags being prohibited in public federal spaces and that kind of thing. This is stuff that should have happened a long time ago. Like during Reconstruction. Should have been like, you know, this is, and also to be honest, I think it's important for folks who are pro Confederate flag around heritage, particularly the white male Southerners who are trying to find a sense of their own segregated history, is to be honest and create new symbols and do new things and come correct, and if it's not about hate, then create new symbols that don't have that association, and right, make it an opportunity, a design opportunity to do some new stuff, opposed to moving backwards. But guess what? There's a multi-million-dollar industry around all these Confederate monuments, and all federal money goes to that, and it's a whole other backstory to this. You would think they have all these monuments for Confederate stuff, but nothing really serious for like slave memorials. Nothing. That doesn't make any sense to me. None.
John, a quick question for you.
Yeah.
I grew up in Baltimore, and so
Okay.
I grew up looking at that Baltimore flag.
Right.
And the stuff you did with it was really mind-blowing to me. I really liked it.
Thank you.
And I just got to know, are there any of those T-shirts left? Because I need one of those T-shirts. Yes!
I'll get you one, yeah. Kind of goes with my poster, right? Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Wait.
I know you're a little like anti-gallery based art world like conversation sometimes.
Right.
But I'm wondering maybe if you could talk about if you think there's a space in between gallery bound art and socially engaged project-based artworks that kind of like bridges that gap, and like do you really think that works in galleries mostly like bound to people who are familiar with like these settings, like is there a potential there to actually like enact social change and conversations that lead to more?
Well, I don't have anything to do with galleries, against galleries. I mean, I started off in Soho at a gallery, right? And the Afro-Confederate battle flag I showed in Soho at the FN Gallery right there in Princeton. And in fact, the gallery owner was cool. He said, hey, let's hang this flag outside, out of the window across Broadway. So that, was a gallery that was very supportive. So I think you got to take it case by case, gallery by gallery. There's some galleries who will be like, yo, let's do some innovative stuff and let's produce some stuff. And there'll be other galleries who will try to pimp you out. So you really got to take it on a case by, they're not-for-profit galleries, there's ones just all about money. For me, I don't think in terms of objects to sell and move in that way, I think in terms of projects. And so if I would have sold all my flags all along, I would have had nothing to build both conceptually and art object-wise so that I can help control my own creative narrative on how to push the work forward. So I needed to keep that work close to me so that I can continue the bigger master project. You know what I mean? But other artists, that's not what it's about. It's like, look, I'm doing cool stuff, I want to sell it, and do more stuff, and cool, and that can work. If that's, and sometimes, like Dred Scott, he'll show in galleries. There's plenty of artists that Karen Finley will show in galleries. People need to create valuation on their work. For me, it's more about creating history and being part of a historical development. I wanted to be a part of helping bringing that flag down. That meant more to me than trying to sell flags, Sotheby's or Chelsea or something like that. But I think artists can approach it in very different ways, and clever ones know how to play both sides of it, right? Make money and do politically relevant stuff. I mean, it's like magic, but few people are allowed to do that. You got to be super smart and sometimes lucky to be in that position. But I don't think it's something that you apply for and get a letter in the mail saying, you'll have access to do these things. Sometimes it's luck, and sometimes meeting the right people who can get in your corner and support your work. I mean, so, I've been very lucky. For instance, the quilt, woman that I work with on the quilt, actually bought all my Confederate flag prints. She helped support my work by buying, and we traded like the flag work for quilt work. Her services helping me make the quilt. So, working with other artists and trading with other artists to help push the work also became a very important sub-economy and trying to push the work forward. Because I wanted, most of the money that I try to generate is to do more work, right? because the equity and what I do is in the work and the history that needs to be created from that work. So that's the investment for me. Any other questions?
Going twice?
Okay.
I want to start by saying I'm a big fan of your hair.
Oh, cool.
It's funky. What would you say about how supporters of the Confederate flag kind of attempted to disown Dylann Roof as they kind of attempted to disown slavery?
Well, wait, say it again. Sorry.
How they try to disown Dylann Roof, like he's not a representation of the Confederacy, but it bears a similar resemblance to how they kind of tried to disown slavery. And I just wanted
Now,
to
who was disowned?
Dylann Roof.
Oh, right. Yeah, like why? Like they trying to disown him from?
It's almost like he doesn't represent our ideals.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of that dishonest and sincere discussion about what's going on in terms of those conversations. There were plenty of people that were rooting that guy on. Think about it. The cops bought him like a Happy Meal or something, right? It's like, right? He killed 9 people, a suspect, and then, he gets treated in this pampering way where you get someone like the tennis player Blake gets thrown to the ground. It's just unbelievable to me. Yeah, so I think he was a conduit for a bigger discussion and frustration around race dynamics in America. And I think there's a lot of white males who have in terms of the ones who glorify the past and the Confederacy and yearning for this sense of white culture and what that means and how that defines who we are. Black folks got that thing, what do we got? And, so I think there's some real legitimate kind of psychodynamics going on. And I think that needs to be addressed in a very honest way. And I don't think folks who are going through that should be dismissed. That's not fair. But it needs to be an honest discussion about the codes of identity, and particularly when they have been contaminated through terroristic acts like lynchings and segregation, and that this is an opportunity. Like if I was a white male who was pro, I would be like, yo, okay, get the flag, let's do some different stuff. Be honest about it and kind of move in that way. And not hang on to these things that are clearly, it's a bad PR move. Really, I think. But it's more than just a PR. It's a real fight about supremacy and power and giving up that. That's a hard thing, So it plays out with the codes first. And that's why people have to die before people really change up the behavior.
So I know you said you didn't like oftentimes comparing culture,
right.
But one of the problems with the Confederacy and the flag and people trying to dissociate it with slavery is that it is wholly ingrained with slavery.
Right.
And I'm wondering, what would it look like? Because it doesn't seem like there's been any penitence over that. Like there hasn't been we're sorry that we did this.
Right.
There's
Right.
monuments. There's we did this.
Right.
Versus in Germany,
Right.
there's not Adolf Hitler Boulevard.
Right.
Like how outside of Washington, D.C., there's Jeff Davis Highway, the president of the Confederacy. I guess my question is, what would it look like for
the Civil War on some level was about powerful white men fighting over economic systems, right? And then when it's over, you take General Lee and pat him on the back and move forward, and they all went to the same schools, and it's like a tennis match in a serious way. You're on that side, I'm on this side, but we're related. We have the same education pedigree, this and that. So there was no real us against them. Black folks, they became like the consolation, freedom became a consolation prize out of this other thing that happened. Frankly, part of me really believes, I mean, this is not so hard to say, but part of me like fantasized about what would have happened if the South had won, right? Then it could have been an opportunity for black folks to really fight for their freedom. And that way, kind of earn it in a different kind of way. You follow what I'm saying? Because when it becomes this reaction that you crystallize out and you didn't really, like, that's why Reconstruction took 100 years. Think about this, 100 years to go through the civil rights movement from Reconstruction is mind-boggling to me. To be so intelligent, it takes 100 years? You're going backwards from Reconstruction to the civil rights movement? But if there would have been some Haiti revolutionary type activity when you're fighting for your own thing, it would have been a different dynamic, I suspect. When you fight for your own freedom, I think it means much, much more.
Give John a round of applause.